It was an ordinary Tuesday morning in the heart of downtown Atlanta. The sun had just begun to rise over the skyline, casting golden light across the sidewalks as the city slowly stirred to life. Inside a busy coffee shop nestled on the corner of Peachtree Street, the smell of freshly brewed espresso wafted through the air, mingling with the soft hum of jazz music playing in the background. People from all walks of life bustled through the cafe, students tapping away on laptops, professionals waiting in line in crisp suits, and early risers flipping through newspapers. The atmosphere was peaceful, warm, and full of promise. That is until she walked in. She wasn't loud. She wasn't demanding. She didn't walk with arrogance. In fact, she carried herself with the quiet kind of grace that made people glance twice, not out of judgment, but out of admiration. She was tall, poised, dressed in a simple yet elegant black blazer and tailored slacks. Her natural curls bounced slightly as she walked toward the counter. Her name was Danielle, a 38-year-old successful corporate consultant who had just landed a multi-million-dollar deal the night before. But this morning, all she wanted was a hot chai latte before heading to her meeting across the street. She stood patiently in line, scrolling through emails on her phone, unaware that someone behind the counter had already taken notice of her, not with interest, but with something darker. Something subtle, but sharp. The cashier was a young woman, maybe in her mid-20s, with platinum blonde hair, pulled into a tight ponytail, and a name tag that read Heather. She seemed friendly with other customers, smiling, cracking light jokes, even offering one woman a free muffin just because. But the moment Danielle stepped forward to place her order, Heather's entire demeanor changed. "What can I get you?" Heather said, her tone suddenly flat, her eyes avoiding Danielle's entirely. Danielle, still in a cheerful mood, smiled politely. "Hi there. I'll have a grande chai latte with oat milk, please." Heather didn't type anything into the register. Instead, she sighed and crossed her arms. "We're out of oat milk." Danielle blinked. "Oh, okay, no problem. I'll take it with almond milk, then." Another sigh. "That's out, too." Now, there were murmurs in the line behind Danielle. A man in a business suit raised an eyebrow. A college girl looked up from her phone. Danielle, still keeping her cool, tilted her head slightly. "All right, do you have soy?" Heather leaned on the counter. "We're only doing regular milk today. But I heard you offering oat milk to the lady before me," Danielle said calmly. Not confrontational, just confused. Heather shrugged. "That was a special exception. We're not doing any more of that." The shift in the room was subtle but sharp. A silence crept in, and Danielle could feel the weight of eyes beginning to settle on her back. She looked around, sensing the tension in the air, but choosing grace over conflict. "All right, then I'll take the chai with regular milk." Heather finally typed it in. "That'll be $6.85, she said dryly. Danielle reached into her sleek black handbag and pulled out her wallet. As she opened it, Heather visibly rolled her eyes, as if expecting EBT cards or coupons. And then it happened. Danielle didn't pull out cash. She didn't pull out a debit card. She pulled out a black card. Not just any black card, an American Express Centurion card. The kind of card you don't apply for. The kind that is invited. A symbol of elite status, extreme financial success, and power. Heather's smirk faded instantly. The chatter behind Danielle had now stopped completely. The businessman in the line actually leaned forward slightly, eyes widening. The girl with the phone slowly lowered it. Danielle placed the card gently on the counter. Heather looked at it as if it were glowing. "Oh," she muttered, fumbling slightly to take it. "I didn't realize." Danielle simply smiled. Not smugly, not with revenge, but with the quiet kind of confidence that only comes from knowing exactly who you are, and that no one can reduce your worth to a stereotype. "No worries," she said gently. "Take your time." Heather ran the card, hands shaking slightly now. She avoided eye contact as she handed the receipt back. Danielle signed it smoothly and turned away to the pickup counter. Behind her, the cafe was no longer silent. The whispers started again, but this time they were different. Was that really a black card? She handled that with so much grace. That cashier just embarrassed herself. "Heather, now flustered, avoided eye contact with everyone. Danielle stood by the pickup area, calm as ever. She had just taught a lesson, not with shouting or anger, but with quiet power. And it wasn't over yet. Danielle stood near the pickup counter, her hands gently clasped in front of her as she waited for her drink. The black card had already vanished back into her wallet, but its impact still lingered like a ripple in still water. Conversations around the cafe hadn't fully resumed. It was as if the energy in the room had shifted, like a silent reckoning had just passed through. Heather, the cashier, was now visibly tense. Her once bubbly demeanor had evaporated. She stood stiffly behind the counter, no longer making jokes with customers. Every movement she made was slightly more robotic, as if she were now hyper-aware of every word, every glance, every action. And she had reason to be, because the manager had seen everything. From the back hallway near the kitchen, Carmen, the cafe's general manager, a no-nonsense woman in her late 40s with a keen eye for fairness, had caught the interaction. She wasn't standing there out of coincidence. One of the baristas had quietly texted her moments before. "You might want to come out here. Something weird's going on with Heather and this customer." Carmen didn't like drama, but she despised injustice. She had built this cafe's reputation on kindness and equality. What she just witnessed, that wasn't it. As Danielle's drink was finally prepared and her name was gently called out, she turned to collect it with the same poise she walked in with. But before she could exit the cafe, Carmen stepped forward. "Ma'am," she said, loud enough for people nearby to hear, but with professional courtesy, "could I have just a moment of your time?" Danielle turned, slightly surprised but not alarmed. "Of course." Carmen gestured toward a quieter area of the cafe, away from the line, but still visible enough to hold Heather accountable. "I want to sincerely apologize for what just happened," Carmen began. Her voice was steady, but her eyes revealed genuine concern. "That is not the experience we stand for here. I saw what occurred, and frankly, I'm deeply disappointed." Danielle nodded slowly, maintaining her grace. "Thank you for acknowledging it. I wasn't going to make a scene, but it was disappointing." Carmen's jaw tightened slightly. "That employee will be spoken to immediately. We have a zero-tolerance policy for discrimination in any form. It's not just about customer service, it's about respect. And I thank you for handling it with the kind of dignity that most people wouldn't have been able to maintain in that situation." Danielle sipped her drink calmly. "I believe how you respond says more about you than the offense itself." Carmen nodded in agreement. "Still, this was unacceptable, and on behalf of our entire team, I'd like to offer you a year of free drinks with us. It's the least we can do." Danielle smiled softly, her eyes kind. "That's very generous. But honestly, I didn't need anything free. I just needed to be treated like everyone else." In the background, Heather's eyes widened. She was still standing at the counter, trying to listen without being obvious. The other baristas were exchanging silent glances. Her face flushed with a mix of guilt, embarrassment, and fear. Danielle looked Carmen in the eye and said something that carried more weight than 100 reprimands. "Sometimes it's not about punishment. It's about awakening." Carmen looked thoughtful for a moment. "I understand." Danielle gave a polite nod. "Have a blessed day." And with that, she turned and walked out the door. But the story didn't end there, because the next customer in line, a young white man in a hoodie who had been quietly observing the entire scene, stepped up to the counter. He looked Heather straight in the eye. "I'll have whatever she had," he said firmly, "and charge me double." Heather blinked. "Double?" He leaned in just slightly, to make up for whatever the hell that was. "You should be ashamed." Heather didn't reply. And then the woman behind him, a Latina mother holding her toddler, spoke up too. "She handled that better than I ever could have." That was disgusting to watch. More and more customers began murmuring, not rudely, but with conviction. It was as if the cafe itself had developed a collective conscience. No one was yelling. No one was making threats. But the message was clear. That kind of behavior wouldn't be tolerated. By the time Carmen returned to the front, Heather was already on the verge of tears. "I wasn't trying to be," she began. But Carmen held up a hand. "Stop. It doesn't matter what you thought you were doing. What matters is what you did." And what you did embarrassed this business, embarrassed your coworkers, and most importantly, dehumanized a customer. Heather looked down, her voice a whisper. Am I fired? Carmen exhaled. Go home. We'll discuss your future here after a formal review. Heather walked to the back without another word. The silence was deafening. Outside, Danielle stood across the street, looking back at the coffee shop. She didn't need to know what was being said. She didn't need to hear the aftermath. She had done her part. With grace. With strength. With the quiet, undeniable power of someone who knows her worth. She didn't demand revenge. She didn't raise her voice. She let her presence speak. The sun had barely shifted in the sky, but inside that cafe, a transformation had begun. What started as a quiet moment of prejudice ended up igniting a silent revolution of awareness, one that neither Heather nor anyone else present would ever forget. Carmen, now seated in her office at the back of the cafe, opened her laptop and pulled up the employee training manual. She sat for a moment, staring at the screen. Her mind wasn't on procedures or policies. It was on people. That customer, Danielle, had shown more poise and power in 5 minutes than some people show in a lifetime. Carmen had worked in management for over 2 decades, but what she had just witnessed was something rare. It wasn't just a teachable moment. It was a transformational one. She sent a message to the company's HR department. We need to update our diversity and inclusion training. What happened today at Store 72 can't happen again. The reply came within minutes. Understood. Send full incident report. We'll escalate immediately. Meanwhile, word of what happened had already begun to spread. A teenage girl who had been sitting at a table with her laptop during the whole event had quietly recorded part of the interaction. She hadn't caught everything, but she captured enough. Danielle's calm voice. Heather's refusal. The shift in tone when the black card appeared. The aftermath. The girl uploaded it to TikTok with a simple caption. Racism still lives in quiet corners. Watch how Grace shuts it down. Within the hour, it had over 100,000 views. By evening, it was on Twitter. People began commenting. That woman is a queen. Imagine being treated like that while holding more wealth than the person serving you. This is why grace under pressure is so powerful. Danielle, if you see this, you are a role model. Even as Danielle went about her day, unaware of the digital storm swirling around her, her impact was multiplying. Not because she intended to go viral, but because truth travels faster when it rides on dignity. Meanwhile, Heather sat alone in her apartment, the blinds half closed, her phone screen glowing harshly in the dark room. Her name hadn't been mentioned in the viral clip, but a few sharp-eyed commenters had already figured out which cafe it was. People were asking for names. A Yelp review had already been posted about a racist barista at the corner coffee spot. She scrolled endlessly, each comment like a pinprick to her pride. For the first time in a long while, she felt exposed. Not because she was called out, but because somewhere deep down, she knew the truth. She had judged that woman, not because of anything Danielle said or did, but because of how she looked, because of a bias so deeply rooted, Heather hadn't even realized she was watering it. But now it was blooming, ugly and undeniable, on public display. She thought back to the moment Danielle handed her the card. The color, the weight, the unmistakable sheen of exclusivity. It hadn't just been a bank card. It had been a mirror that reflected back Heather's ignorance. Tears stung her eyes, not just from shame, but from confusion. How did I become this person? She whispered to no one. It was a question worth asking, and one she would have to face for a long time. Across town, Danielle sat in her living room, legs curled beneath her, sipping tea. Her phone buzzed with a text from her friend Simone. Girl, you're on TikTok. Someone filmed what happened at the cafe. Danielle blinked. Wait, seriously? Simone replied with a link. Danielle clicked, watched, paused. She didn't speak. She didn't smile. She didn't frown. She just sat there, watching herself navigate a moment that at the time had felt so small yet so familiar. She'd lived through hundreds like it, at stores, at airports, at job interviews, the quiet snubs, the subtle condescension. But this one was different. This one had witnesses, and this one had turned into a message, a movement even if just for a day. She texted back, "Wow, I didn't even notice someone was filming." Simone responded, "It's blowing up. You're trending, sis. People are calling you a hero." Danielle smiled faintly and typed, "Not a hero, just tired." Simone replied with a heart emoji, "Still proud of you. The world needs more of your kind of tired." Danielle leaned back and exhaled. She hadn't meant to start anything. She just wanted coffee. But maybe, just maybe, what she didn't start had already begun. The next morning, the sun spilled golden warmth across the skyline, stretching its rays through the windows of Danielle's apartment. She stood quietly, watching the world stir awake outside. Though the world was buzzing with her story, Danielle remained grounded, silent even. She hadn't posted anything, hadn't commented or tweeted. She wasn't looking for attention. She didn't need validation from strangers. She had lived this story long before a camera caught it. But something inside her had shifted. It wasn't anger. It wasn't pride. It was clarity. Clarity that no matter how much grace she carried, some people would still choose to see only her skin first. But more importantly, clarity that how she responds could shape more than just a moment. It could shape a movement, a mindset, even a mirror for others to examine themselves in. Later that day, Danielle returned to the same cafe. Not because she wanted to, but because she needed to. Some would say she was brave. Others might say foolish. But for Danielle, it was about confronting a pattern, not a person. She walked in quietly. The soft jingle of the doorbell echoed as all eyes turned. Heather wasn't behind the counter. Instead, Carmen approached her gently. "Danielle," she said warmly, "I was hoping you'd come back." Danielle raised an eyebrow. "You remember my name?" Carmen smiled. "It's not a name you forget." They sat together near the window. Carmen explained that Heather had been suspended pending further investigation and was required to complete racial sensitivity training before returning. She also shared that the company had fast-tracked a new anti-bias initiative based on what happened. Danielle listened quietly, nodding slowly. She didn't need apologies. She wasn't here for consequences. She was here for accountability. And Carmen, to her credit, didn't shy away. "We failed you," she said honestly. "And I'm sorry. But more than that, I want to thank you." Danielle tilted her head, curious. "Because you handled something ugly with grace," Carmen continued, "and you left the door open for us to grow. Most people would have walked away and never come back." Danielle sipped the coffee Carmen had brought her. This time it was free of charge and full of warmth. She said softly, "People are watching now. Not just me. You. All of you. This isn't about canceling anyone. It's about choosing who we become when no one's watching." Carmen nodded. "Then let's become better." And in that quiet, meaningful exchange, a seed was planted. Not of guilt, but of growth. Across the city, Heather sat in a small classroom. Her posture slouched, arms folded, heart heavy. On the whiteboard were the words, "Understanding implicit bias." The instructor, a black woman with eyes filled with wisdom and wounds, began the session. She didn't yell. She didn't shame. She told stories of being followed in stores, of being spoken over, of being underestimated, overlooked, reduced to stereotypes, silenced by stares, cut down by assumptions. Heather listened, and for the first time in her adult life, she heard, not through defense, but through discomfort. And when the instructor said, "Sometimes privilege blinds us to the pain we cause," Heather felt something deep within her crack. It wasn't enough to cry. She had to change, and that journey would take time. The video of Danielle's encounter eventually reached over 5 million views. News outlets picked it up. Podcasts discussed it. Social media exploded with conversations around race, class, and composure. But Danielle, she stayed quiet, offline, present. One afternoon, she spoke to a group of high school girls, most of them young black students, at a local community center. She told them the full story, not the TikTok version. Not just about the black card, but about her mother, who taught her to sit tall when the world tries to shrink you. About her grandmother, who was denied service more than once, and who smiled anyway. And about the power of showing up, even when you don't feel welcome. The girls leaned in, hanging on every word. Danielle ended with this. Your worth is not proven by a card, not even a black card. It's proven by how you carry yourself when the world forgets what you're worth. And trust me, they will forget. But that doesn't mean you ever should. And somewhere in that same city, a new barista stood behind the counter. A young Latina woman, nervous on her first day, served coffee with a smile and open heart. She'd read about Danielle. She'd watched the video. She'd seen the comments, the support, the call for change. And as a woman of color herself, she vowed silently, "Not on my shift, not on my cafe." Because sometimes stories don't change the world in a headline. They change it in the heartbeats of those who hear them.